Okay, so I don't do this sort of thing very often, so this explanation might be really shit. Um, and everything that I do on here, you could probably do in any other platform. The only thing is the specific brushes I use, they are very just, they're Clip Studio specific. I believe I'm using like Clip Studio, uh, yeah, this is version 2, but I never bought I only bought the first I bought it when it was a one-time purchase. So I think all the things that I have at my disposal you can just pick up. If you like I don't know if it's still free or if you have to pay for the one time still, but either way, these should all be very accessible just right out of the box. It's just a matter of, I know Clip Studio is kind of confusing for a lot of people that haven't used it. But it's generally very straightforward, I promise. Anyway, so whenever I draw specifically, I don't do this is all I need to clarify. This is not a tutorial outside of just what I do. I'm not a professional. I do this as a hobby and this is just this is my process at the current moment. It changes all the time. But my specific shit is usually just like one passing it, rendering, and then usually maybe a gradient map. So like if I were to like here, let's just throw something down real quick. General body shape, right? Um, all my stuff's super loose. This brush specifically has a lot of variety to it, um, but it's also I like how thin it gets, and I like how it kind of resembles that of a normal not a ball point, but like any type of pen in real life that could kind of emulate that pressure. It does that really well. So let me just. Uh, I don't expect myself to draw anything good for this, but at least like it's a form, right? Um, but just to like get the idea of planes and shit down. So important thing about this, like the way I go about things, um, I tend to color and render in the same go. So if I'm doing like here, I I should really probably be using an actual drawing to be showing how I do this, but it's not that big of a deal. Um, so let's just like quickly throw something down. Oh, and note, I use a keyboard, so that means I have hotkeys. I kind of grew up with a computer using like Fire Alpaca, so I'm very used to hotkeys. I think if you use an iPad, it definitely speeds up your process. Because I also flip my canvas a lot, and having a keyboard that I bind that to is actually very easy for me. Anyway, so if I'm doing like I do this, I have like my base, and then I use a clipping mask, usually, clipping mask, to just kind of throw down something. So if I'm like shading like this is the color, right? Let's just do that. Typically, what I do now is sometimes I'll like lay this down. Like if I have like all my colors flattened out, so like, let's say, let's just do this. Hair here, um, maybe it goes down here, and like a shirt. This looks so bad. Sometimes I'll flatten it down just to have like that base color, so I have it in case I mess up. And then I go from there. So sometimes I'll just select. Notice how it kind of bleeds in a little bit. That's not usually what I do, but it doesn't make a big difference in this case. I'll grab a color and I'll use this brush specifically because to me it really maps down colors in a way that I enjoy. I'm not going to do anything fancy right now, but like you can get the general idea down very quick for your shapes. Uh, so this specific brush is also super good because I just really like the texture. I only really use this brush honestly for all my rendering. Um, and I'll just yeah, like for hair, you just kind of do a lot of this just how you render is how you do it. I don't know how to teach what I do specifically, but let me here's like something that I didn't finish, and I could probably just give a better example of how I go about doing things on this. This is just one of my characters that I draw constantly. Uh, Usually whenever my lines are a bit more closed in like this, I don't have to go out of my way to like kind of loosely select things. I'll select from the and make sure, you could, in whatever program you can actually select. I'm not going to do a very fancy example, but I'll at least show how I like map out and like do things generally. Once again, I have it so I inverse my selection while selecting the outside just to save on time that way. It's usually duller. And then I, once again, place down my flats. All my art is super, 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 super messy and loose. That's partially out of a lack of my own patience and something that, you know, I like to put time into what I do, but it's also, you know, you only have so much time in the day. So all my stuff, I usually just use this simple method of blocking color, rendering, and then my finalizing steps. So I'm just gonna start with the face and only worry about the face for this, just for the sake of time. I take this, I take whatever color, and keep in mind, like, color theory and all that stuff applies. I'm not going to be doing anything here about it. Just imagine this is like a simple one-way light source, whatever. And I tend to just block in from there. Let me actually select this. I do this, oh, sorry, I'm forgetting my own steps. I tend to have, okay. Whenever I'm going about the next part, once this is done, I need to typically... Important thing about this specific brush that I use and a lot of others is I duplicate the same base color whenever I'm rendering, because otherwise, like, see how it already, like, it blends and mixes as it goes? If I don't do that, it lays on flat, and it's not impossible to deal with, and if I'm doing something that, like, I want a lot of harsher colors to stick out, I will do that, but generally speaking, it's easier for, like, more natural forms to just, like, just duplicate your base color if you're going to be using your base color. I also need to fix that so it's not scaling into the actual red. So from this part, I just kind of lay down my shadows, like where they would be. Once again, this is going to be a very messy example. I'm also accidentally stealing some of that red, which I wouldn't do if I was putting more time into this. Just like a lot of this is a more stylistic thing where I enjoy my art to be a lot more messy. I like really rough rendering on my art because I think it gives it more personality. And, you know, that might change by tomorrow. Maybe I'll pick up something new. But generally speaking, this is kind of what I do. I'm not following any specific line, like the lines that I placed down, and I'll show you why in a second. But yeah, like, just a general, like, there's something. It's not exactly coherent, because I don't know what's going on there. But it's definitely a start. This would be a beginning part before I go back through and clean things up. And then, like, the great thing about this brush is I feel like the bigger it gets, the more loose you can be with your line work. So, like, if it is, like, for a cloth, usually I just throw something down like this, because as long as it shows the difference in, like, layers with your shadow, typically it can read pretty easily, very quickly. So, you know, just showing the difference between this upper layer, which leads into, like, a little, like a fold over here. As long as you can read that, that typically is really good for, like, a first start. Once again, not a professional, just, like, little things like that. Like, coherency, specifically whenever you're working with a lot of renders, is very important. So the next part for me usually is I actually turn my line art into an overlay. Sometimes I'll have to duplicate it, but if you depending on the art piece, I don't do this for everything. I feel like it can blend the colors together in a lot, like, nicer. Here. So whenever, like, the colors don't blend in how I want to, sometimes I'll take a blending layer, kind of run the base color on top of it a little bit, and let's merge that down real quick. Oops, that guy was still an overlay layer. Make sure it's normal whenever you, like, merge stuff down, and then do that. Sometimes you can, like, bump it down a little bit. But to me, that just kind of gives it a better, like, it blends in easier if you're going for a very messy look. Because from here, I usually tend to like render on top of what I'm doing. So now to get like a better, more more better, easier coherency, I tend to go on top of my line art and start to go from there. And I'll go through and render. From here, it's just painting. And then you, like, I don't know if it's even that coherent, but you can start to get like a vibe of like where things are going, and you just kind of do it. And notice how it doesn't take very long to do. I tend to render section by section, but also it's important to kind of like do everything as you go, because you need to make sure your lighting's very similar in all parts of the body. Another way to deal with that is, let's just do this. Let's get rid of this, make it normal. Oh my gosh, make it normal. And you just do it in black and white, which is another preference of mine, because you can also see like, oh, it's kind of hard to tell the contrast. So you go here, you hue and contrast, you bump up your contrast. And there are definitely better tutorials on gradient mapping. But if you're not going for like a specific color palette, Clip Studio, and I know Procreate has this very readily available, you can go and gradient map your stuff. I bumped up the contrast a bit too high, so it's harder to like get a good color on this. But like, let's just take that one for example. You can mess with your curves on it. So like, hey, that yellow's a bit too like harsh. I want that to be a bit lighter. I don't want it to kind of do that. You can just kind of course, now I'm not going to be able to hit what I need to hit because this is very white. But gradient maps can also just add a lot of like pop to it, can bring together a lot of colors that aren't usually like together in a nice way. And sometimes even as a finalizing touch, you can take a like black and white version of your final like rendering, throw a gradient map on it, and like put a layer effect and put it on top of everything just to bring it all together a little bit. Like, you know, like it looks kind of cool. Really, that's it. I'm going to be linking together all the, like, you know, specific brushes that I use and stuff, because I renamed them because a lot of them are Japanese and I don't know how to read Japanese. But those two specific brushes are really my lifesaver. The line art one that I use and the paint one. When it comes to other program equivalents, I can't help with that because I don't use other programs. But if I can find anything that kind of matches it, I know the Nico roll in Procreate's really good. The thing with Procreate with me is I don't like that you can't render and blend as you go. You have to use a separate tool. And that's why I really made the switch to Procreate, because like being able to color and render as I go is something that I really enjoy because it saves a lot of time. So yeah.